Hi, welcome to the workshop. I'm Mitch and today I'm going to be looking at toothed blades for low angle jack planes. This blade is by Kunz. It's a German company with a very good reputation, and I'm going to be using my Quangsheng Chinese number 62, which I believe is sold under different names such as Wood River, Dakota and other ones I think around the world. I've been extremely pleased with this one. So much so I'm not going to go out and buy a Lee Nielsen or a Veritas to do a comparison test. This works so well for me, I'm happy with it. So I'm going to be putting that tooth blade in this plane, showing you how it works and one of the advantages of using it, and also see how good the blade is. Now this is going to be my first experience of a toothed plane blade. I've heard good things about them, and hopefully it's going to live up to its promise. But they do constitute quite an investment. This is quite expensive. The iron is about 3.5mm thick, and obviously there's more machining to get all these individual teeth in there. Is it worth it? Well, hopefully we're going to find out. Now, the reason for having the tooth blade is that instead of having one long edge on there, we have lots of tiny little almost chisel-like teeth, and that's supposed to reduce the risk of tear out. So if we're working on figured woods, hopefully we're going to get a better job. We're going to be able to flatten them and get them ready for a smoother a lot quicker. I've got here a piece of oak which hasn't been touched since it's come from the sawmill. I've got an idea that it's a little bit figured, and hopefully we're going to find that out in a minute. That's a medium test for the iron. A more difficult one is this piece of yew, which, as you can see, has been through a power planer and is in a terrible state. So, straight out of the packet, I don't know how sharp that's going to be. I have an idea it's not going to be too bad actually, because I think Kunz probably put quite an effort into it. It looks a reasonably polished bevel on there, so I'm going to try it. It's always nice to know if a company have put that effort in. Just shows a little more dedication. So in we go with that. And then I want to set it for a reasonable cut. By sighting down the sole of the plane, you can just see the blade starting to emerge. We're going to need to get the lateral adjustment sorted on that. So still not laterally correct. Now, I haven't been able to get this iron to come through evenly on the plane. I've just been investigating a little bit. The sides of the iron, as you can hear, are not ground flat. And I've measured the width at the top and at the bottom, and they're slightly different. Measuring one side, it's square, but as you can see on this side, hope you can see, it's actually a little bit out. So I'm going to have to take it away and regrind that bevel so that it's at 90 degrees to align down the centre of the blade. That's a bit pants, but hey, what can you do? Something else I've just noticed when I went to sharpen it is that one end of the blade, you can see here, the blade is ending in points, and at this end it's ending in little flat chisel teeth. So it looks as though it's been machined too deep at this end, or hasn't been lapped enough on this side. So I'll have to address that as well. Oh dear, oh dear. And that's looking a bit better. Let's have a go and see what it's like. That's flattened it off nicely. Not as figured as I thought it was, but a few strokes, it's Let's make sure it's nice and straight. Now I can swap out that blade, set up for a thin shaving, close the mouth up. To begin with, just take dust. It's starting to get some nice thin shavings. So I hope you'll agree, that's not bad. But can it tackle this? That will be quite interesting. And I'll just bring you in close to show you what the surface is doing. You can see the cross hatch on there as the teeth are coming through, first in one direction, then in the other. And it's still tearing out there. Sometimes you're going to hit a piece of wood which, no matter what you throw at it, is going to fight back. But I hope you saw that actually flattening it with the tooth blade, making these tiny little shavings, we were able to get it really flat and within probably about 5 or 6 thou of smooth as well. So the amount of sanding you'd need to do after preparing it flat with a tooth blade would be fairly minimal. Of course, what it should look like when you're finished, like that little bit there, a lovely wood. So in conclusion, the tooth blade I've found to be very useful for flattening tricky boards, highly figured boards, boards where you're getting a lot of tear out using conventional planing techniques. The tooth blade really does help. You can get your board nice and flat and just have several thou of clean up to do from the rough surface that it leaves. If you're lucky, you can go straight to a smoother with a finely set blade and you'll get away with it, as I did with this piece of oak. If it really is a difficult piece of timber like this, then your best bet is to flatten it with the tooth blade, and then I think to move on to a sander. And there won't be much sanding left to do when you've flattened it, and that's a real advantage. As far as this particular tooth blade by Kunz goes, I did have a couple of problems with it. First of all, the sides weren't perfectly straight, which meant that using it in a jig to try and get a square bevel on the end is going to be problematic. Also, it had been lapped on the back unevenly, or it had been machined unevenly, so we had pointed tips on one end of the blade and chisel tips on the other edge. So I had to do a fair bit of work on it before I could use it properly. It's also thicker than the original Quangsheng blade, so swapping it in and out of the plane means making an adjustment to the pivot bolt for the lever cap. So a few things that they could improve on, but steel appears to be good. It takes a good edge and it does some good work if you're prepared to put a bit of time into it. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Cheerio!